because the way I kind of metaphorically look at GPT is it's just the biggest library that has ever existed, plus the internet.
It's just like accessibility. Oh my God.
The difference between knowledge and experience. Is there one?
We know for a fact that experience does have a role to play there is an advantage to having more experience than just knowledge.
I feel like Sam Altman should be paying you money.
I swear to God, dude. Like, I'm just selling this shit.
Welcome to YouX, the global podcast at the intersection of research, design, and development. Sit back and listen as your hosts explore the ever-evolving world of user experience. And now, Chris Covell and Mustafa Ahmed.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of YouX. I'm Mustafa. How's it going, Chris?
Mustafa, how's it going, man? Doing good. Excited for this episode.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. We're going to be tackling the topic of AI.
Yeah. This one, ripped straight from the headlines. Everyone and their mother is talking about AI, so I guess maybe we should too.
Yeah. So, do you want to kick things off? I know you've had a bone to pick with AI since it came about.
Yeah, I don't know if I would categorize it that. I think AI is pretty amazing, at least from the kind of small amount of interactions that I've had in terms of a day-to-day, integrating it within the work that I'm doing. But no, I think it's pretty hard to deny. But I think first off, because we're talking about AI, we're talking about UX research and what the interaction is there. How do we see AI helping? Maybe where do we see it ultimately hurting? And if it will take away, because everyone's kind of getting a little bit scared right now in terms of will AI take my job? Do I have to think about a new career? This kind of thing. I mean, I think first I'm going to just, I'm not going to bury the lead here, but I think the answer is definitely no, at least for UX research. And we'll definitely get into why. But I think we want to maybe quickly outline what we mean by UX research. I know that's kind of a basic question, but if we can just quickly, break down what we think that what we're talking about specifically, and then I think what we mean by AI, because AI is a pretty big term too. So I think starting there and then getting into it might be a good way to begin.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so do you want to start with the research bit? I could take the AI bit.
Yeah. I'll start with the research bit. I think the AI bit is actually easier. I mean, the way I look at AI is just the LLMs, right? That's what I'm referring to when I'm thinking about AI. But maybe you can get into a little bit more detail with that. But for research, I'd say that the way I would break it down is we have, let's say, primary research and then secondary research. So, and focused on the primary, we have generative, we have evaluative, and then we have let's call it blue sky. So generative would be qualitative or quantitative methods to produce knowledge that go towards generating some solution. Evaluative, to me, both again quantitative and qualitative methods to evaluate, to test some prototype, some solution that exists already, and then based on those findings we iterate. And then blue sky is a little harder to define, but it's more curiosity driven. It's, again, both qualitative and quantitative, but it's really not attached to like a specific project or product, let's say. It's more about just building knowledge for the organization or for reasons that you might ultimately not know that if you would be able to find use for right away, but could provide use down the line. So it's kind of just this more foundational type work. Well, first off, would you add anything?
No, I think you got it spot on. I think that pretty much covers UX research in a nutshell. All right, cool. So for AI, I guess for the sake of this discussion, we're referring to AI as any of the large language models or LLMs that you talked about. Basically, anything that's out there with the word GPT attached to it. But I look at AI as a little bit more than that, because these large language models are just essentially just a really powerful brain that knows how to string words together to answer a question. I think there's a layer on top of automations that really makes AI, a beast to be reckoned with.
So we're going to talk specifically about LLMs, about the ChatGPT 3 and 4 and beyond. And I guess the big question that comes up, I think, right away is will it take our jobs? And how do you answer that question? I've already given my answer, but I want to hear what you think, and then we can kind of get into why we think this.
Yeah. So I mean, first and foremost, we all kind of know that these AI models that exist as of today are very user initiated, right? It's not just going to start off on its own and just start doing things. Even though there have been some smaller experimental versions of that out there, like AutoGPT, that you give it a large problem to solve and it'll figure out the steps to do it. You can go to ChatGPT today and ask it to generate a discussion guide for you. Well, it can do that, right? You could go to ChatGPT, you could feed in, 1,000 rows of qualitative responses on a survey and ask it to theme it for you. It can do that, right? There are a lot of these little things that it's able to do as of today to ease the life of a UX researcher. But if you really wanted to be creative, and I know we talked about this, that ChatGPT cannot, create knowledge, right? That's what makes research unique, right? But at the end of the day, if I just take that discussion guide and ask the questions, somebody responds, and now I know I need a probe. Why can't I get GPT to just do that, right? That if it here, it's a two-way thing, right? You feed it something, it says something back. You give it some feedback, it says something back. So if it's able to create that discussion guide, and then now the latest version of ChatGPT at the time of this recording is able to actually talk to you as well. So if it were to then talk and ask those questions to a user or to, let's say, a research participant, that participant responds back. And now that ChatGPT has been instructed to probe and dig deeper. It could come up with a question on the fly based on that response and ask it and gather more data, right? Now, tying in the automations, that's where the note-taking comes in. What if all these responses are going into some sort of form that you set up that's going to automatically write to your spreadsheet where you're basically, or a Notion workbook, or however you do your note-taking, and all your notes are now ready and sitting there waiting to be crunched and analyzed, which is, again, what ChatGPT could do, right? So in a nutshell, if a human were to come along and string together a lot of these automations and instructions for ChatGPT to follow, I think it could actually run user interviews. Now, how effective is that going to be? That's a different question altogether. But we've seen since the first version of GPT 3.5 came out to now what we have is 4 at the time of this recording. It's only getting better and better, right, at communicating. So only time will tell.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I want to go back and say, actually, I'm surprised you didn't catch this. When I was breaking down what UX research was, because this is actually important for the discussion, but I first distinguished between primary and secondary research, and I started explaining primary research. I completely forgot secondary research, because I think secondary research is things like synthesizing, past knowledge, synthesizing data that exists already out there, taking lit review is another way of secondary research, or desk research, competitive analysis. I would consider that to be, to some degree, secondary research, even though you could, that actually blurs the line a little bit, because there's, times like, for example, what Mark does, is that secondary research or primary research? I actually think it might be primary. So that can kind of go into both buckets. Interesting. You think that ChatGPT can run an interview someday. Now, it does bring up these motivational questions, like why would ChatGPT, you would have to tell it what you want to find out. Because I think that the biggest, I know we spoke offline, the biggest, like, that's why I distinguished between primary research and secondary research. So I think secondary research, like focusing on how GPT can help research, help UX researchers right now, today, I think that in the secondary research category, it's a gold mine, right? Because it's a great research tool to be able to dig through, ask it certain questions and retrieve answers. Because the way I kind of metaphorically look at GPT is, it's just the biggest library that has ever existed, plus the internet, and being able to retrieve information from it really, really quickly. And I don't know, I guess Zencaster really liked that point, because I got a thumbs up for those who are watching. It's like the internet plus like every book ever written, just condensed, and, in a sense, Google on steroids. So it's great for that kind of activity of secondary research, of seeing what is out there and pulling together many different kinds of information to know more about it. Now, where I think that it definitely will struggle, like can't do it right now, and will continue to struggle, is this idea of running primary research, which is building new knowledge, right? What you're talking about, and let's really get into the details because I think it matters, right? What you're talking about is an ability for the computer to, I guess, from a few simple prompts, create a discussion guide, have the ability to probe. But what really the question I have is around recruitment and then synthesizing and report generating. So if we take, going back to what UX researchers do, if we take the end-to-end process of a interview, let's say generative interview, right? There's no prototype here. We're just interested in this topic because it could lead down the road to some product or service, or we're looking for pain points within this population, let's say. And you put all that into the computer, well, then it would have to somehow get access to, ability to send incentives to people. Then also the ability to send emails, the ability to recruit people. Setting up all of that, all that infrastructure, or what that we all know that we have to do around the study. Get people into a room, or get them on a call, let's say, or have that interaction with them, record it all, which will be fine, and then synthesize and output a report. Is that even feasible?
Some of it is, as of today.
Well,
so
I mean, we need all of it to be feasible for us to start being worried.
So let me play back your scenario here. So every action a researcher would do would be using some tool, right? So let's say you have your participant database sitting in Excel, or better yet, let's say it's in a CRM like HubSpot, right? And then they would filter through that based on the recruitment criteria that they've identified, which ChatGPT could identify, and then just filter through. They then identify those folks, craft an email, which again, GPT can do. They then send that email using an email client like Outlook or Gmail, which GPT can connect into and send through, right? And then get them to book a call, which using another service like Calendly can use that to book a time slot. So the participant would then have to book the time slot. Calendly would automatically generate a Zoom link or Google Meet, so that's also taken care of. The only thing that I don't think theoretically yet, GPT in particular can do is join a Zoom call. But that's also not a problem because as of last month, Zoom came out with its own AI on Zoom chats that does note taking, right? So the note taking part is taken care of. GPT just now has to figure a way to get on the call and ask questions, right? If it figures that bit out, it's golden, right? So there are a lot of these connections and automations and tools that have already been built to be integrated into GPT that people can use for different use cases. It's just a matter of, has anyone successfully been able to string everything together and simulate an end-to-end user interview?
Now, yeah. So what you're saying is, and I want to make this clear too, because we're talking specifically about interviews, online interviews, right? Right. Because like when I changed the subject to in-person contextual inquiry, for example, or ethnography, we're no longer in the realm of GPT working.
No, we're not. No, not 100% on the project. Like there'll be parts of it you could still do, like the discussion.
I think that that's a key crucial point, that down the road, yeah, this stuff will develop to a point where, things like data analysis or like editing your reports, this kind of thing. I think GPT will always be able to give you points and correct errors and help you and be your little mini research assistant, for sure. But going back to online interviews, which is I think the interesting case in terms of if it can ever be completely outsourced, right? And I think what you're saying is that in principle, because everything is online and digital, right? And if they can get access to, a way to incentivize people, so like send them digital, gift card, this kind of things, and these services exist, like is what you're saying. So in principle, it's possible. You don't think that GPT could ever determine the purpose and the scope of the project, right? That does seem to be something that the researcher, whoever's, let's just say we're, I don't know how long you think it's going to take, but 20 years in the future. And we do have these models, these GPTs, GPT-30 at that point, let's say, who can integrate all these different services and actually run a interview and produce new knowledge. There's not going to be a way for that GPT to have the intuitions that are necessary to say, these are the types of questions that you would want to know given the project, given context of why you want to run this study. That always does seem to be, to me, to be a researcher dependent, something that's very human dependent.
And right. So actually, I mean, with the right set of prompts, you could do that today. Right. So I mean, there's obviously this element of this concept of prompt engineering that we've heard, which is just a fancy new role that's come about in this AI age of folks who know how to write certain prompts in a certain way to get the most out of the AI, right? And through my little experimentation, I've been able to figure out a way to get it to, because like if you really think about the behaviors of a UX researcher, right? If the business stakeholder, we know what typical research asks or scenarios we tend to get, right? And what level of fidelity do those asks usually come with? I've been able to instruct the GPT to take in basic level requests and then start to ask questions, follow-up questions, the way a researcher would, to gather more details about the project and then come up with a more constructive response in terms of a discussion guide and so on. So you basically teach GPT how to behave like a researcher and get more details on the project to then go back and again tap into this massive, library plus the internet, which also includes massive resources like NNG and other platforms that teach other people how to be effective researchers, to go to that knowledge, learn how to be a researcher, and then come back and start building out a discussion guide that is contextually appropriate to what the requirements are. Did that just scare you?
No. Well, I want to learn more and to see if I should be scared or not. But so it all kind of boils down to the prompts, right? And the thing that we do know about GPT is that it's not prompting itself, right? It's waiting for a human to prompt it so that it can then take action.
So the vanilla GPT that exists is exactly that. But I think as of a month or two ago, they came out with something new where you could go and build your own custom GPTs, where you basically feed it the basic knowledge upfront. So we'll add this into the description. And I haven't had a chance to actually show this to you, Chris. I've actually built my own little researcher GPT. So I've basically pre-trained it to behave. So I've only trained it on the behaviors. I haven't trained it on the knowledge yet, right? So I'll explain what that is. So I've trained on behaviors in terms of, if you get a business case scenario as a researcher, go back and ask these types of questions. So basically almost like our briefing decks that we used to have, where we had all series of follow-up questions to understand more and then recommend what type of methodology we should use. So kind of go with those questions, find out more, and then come up with a methodology, right? Then there is the knowledge bit, where I could give a very specific piece of knowledge. Like I could give it a paper on research ops, and these are all the things that you need to do to run research effectively. And you give that as a manual, a training guide for you to follow. I could do that as well and further beef it up. So this as of right now exists on the internet. It's in the link below. If you have a ChatGPT Plus account, you can play around with it and ask questions. It's called Muzzy, the UX researcher.
Yeah, so it looks like you're the one who's trying to single-handedly replace all of UX research with ChatGPT. So there we go. That's this is the beta version of the takeover here.
This Skynet in the making.
This is interesting because actually now it's getting me to think also around surveys. So for example, as I was breaking down what we do for UX researchers, there's quantitative and there's qualitative. A lot of the quantitative work that we do is surveys. And, in principle, it seems like why wouldn't LLM that's fairly well trained be able to take some inputs from a researcher or a business person, and given the right connections, given the right access, get a survey out and analyze the results and have it in the hand of the person who's prompting it, in a couple of days, right? What's not to say that it does seem in principle possible. Obviously, today it's not happening, right? We cannot do it today. But in principle, down the line, it seems possible, right? And whether that means, and I think that the connections that you already rightly pointed out to be, that's the key. There's also some actually going out into the world and observing things and collecting data. As of now, ChatGPT can't really do that. It doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have it doesn't have access to all these cameras. So like a simple question, like if I was to ask my 6-year-old son, if I had one, if there are any leaves on the tree that's right outside my house, let's say, my 6-year-old son would be able to go outside, look at it with his eyes, observe it, come back and give me a true answer. Whereas if I was to ask ChatGPT, what it would probably do is talk about, averages. Even if I gave it, the coordinates, I'm in Denver, Colorado, blah, 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 this time of year, it would probably say, based on the data that we have, based on the climate trends, this kind of thing, there probably won't be any leaves on this tree, but it could be wrong, right? It can't give me a definite answer. Whereas my 6-year-old son certainly could. right? And so my 6-year-old son just beat ChatGPT. It's smarter than ChatGPT in that question.
It's gonna be a trend on this episode where I continue to blow your mind.
Well, let's see. Let's. Well, it's pretty presumptuous, but let's see if you can get there.
All right. So as of right now, you could, if you go outside and click a picture of the tree, you could feed that picture into ChatGPT and it could analyze it. So while it might not be, like a healthy 6-year-old kid who can walk around, it is basically a wheelchair-stricken 6-year-old kid who could roll around if you push him around.
Feeding the photo into ChatGPT defeats the purpose of asking it and just getting the answer back, because I still have to go out and do work and take the photo. I already have the answer, so ChatGPT is an afterthought at that point. There's no. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it this way, right? So let's say.
So not blowing my mind.
No, hold on. I don't accept defeat that easily. Okay, so let's say you got a security camera system, like a Ring system, set up outside your house, right? Again, it's a device connected to the internet, which could hypothetically down the road also be connected to ChatGPT.
Absolutely. I'm not denying that ChatGPT can't have that. I mean, there are plenty of open feed cameras that exist, for example, Times Square or out in front of the Louvre, or, these cameras that are running 24/7 that you can go onto certain websites or YouTube and just watch people at Times Square, for example. And ChatGPT could, hypothetically tap into one of those. That doesn't help me answer the question about the tree that's outside of my.
So that's what I'm saying. You might have your own personal camera outside.
I mean, I'll put it this way. Again, in principle, I guess maybe this is where you want me to go. In principle, we could have cameras surveilling every square inch of the earth, right? At some time, like in 3,000 years from now,
or let's just make it simpler. Let's just say.
Well, hold on. Let me just finish the point. So we could in I don't know, whatever, in the distant future, we could have a scenario where there are cameras set up and they're surveilling every single square foot of the earth, and it's all fed into ChatGPT. And in that scenario, if I ask it questions about the weather, or if I ask it questions about lines at Starbucks or something like that, it can give me back answers that are just as good as if somebody was there observing, right? Okay, so I'm with you. I'm with you there. It's just we don't live in that world right now.
I don't know, but if you're just so I'm trying to go with a more reasonable scenario where you're paranoid. Let's say you live in a dodgy neighborhood. You want to be safe. You set up a few cameras, right? Standard stuff. Loads of people do that. If that's your case scenario, then it could tap into that camera network because it's yours. You probably would have given it permission to then actually look out and then look at the tree and then give you that answer you're looking for.
If I have a camera pointed at the tree, but I don't, and it can't, so it doesn't help me right now.
Yeah,
right?
I know. But what I'm trying to say is it's not like you had a dedicated camera pointed at the tree, right? It was using what was out there because that's what's available, right? Like,
yes, but I guess my point is that if we don't have the camera, then ChatGPT cannot give me, all it could do is give me this analysis about averages and hypothetical situations where it could or could not be right. So in this case, the researcher wins.
No, I mean, so that it's the same as a blind kid, right? Who let's say there's a smart kid who's heard an audiobook or two about trees, and you ask him how many leaves are there. He can't see, so he's just going to give you a logical answer, right? So the thing about ChatGPT is that it has the brain power and the capability to do the analysis. It just needs to be fed in the inputs the way we feed ourselves the inputs through our five senses, right? The moment you're able to unlock those five senses for ChatGPT and give it now more ways of taking in inputs, it could do so much more, right? And yes, as a researcher, there's quite a bit of, observing and looking that we do. There's quite a bit of, I guess hearing the customer. That's another way. It as of today, ChatGPT can listen to you and talk to you. So it's already unlocked one sense.
It's just a bunch of algorithms, and very powerful algorithms, and very useful like today. And I think we're also getting into in principle versus when is this going to when could it actually get to that point? So like, for example, the online interview that ChatGPT can basically, jump from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and eventually giving you the report in your hand. If you want a survey, you have your basic idea of what you want, and in like 3 days you get like the output, and like there's no researcher there. That's, again, I'm not pushing back in principle. It seems like it's possible, right? But it's not. We can't do that today. So how long is it going to take? That's a whole different question.
But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's possible in the next 6 months.
We should make a bet right now on this podcast. That's in 6 months from now. I don't see that,
because there's not that many hurdles left, right?
Well, I mean, you say that, but what we got to wait and really see, because I think that having ChatGPT interact with this new service and put in credit cards, like if you you load in your business credit card, let's just say, because it needs to it needs to recruit people, that costs money. I don't want us you, Mustafa, to turn into Elon Musk predicting self-driving cars 5 years ago, saying we're 2 years away, and then being in this situation we are right now.
Yeah. No, I hear you, because I mean, in Elon's case, there's a bit of politics at play as well. In our case, I guess the only political power at play is you. So
is what?
Is you?
I don't have no affiliation with ChatGPT. I just want to come out and make that clear.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean, see, in all seriousness, the technology is fantastic, and it's already done quite a bit. The missing pieces of the puzzle are just missing existing technology that just needs to come in and connect the dots. It's not that you have to create new technology to connect these dots, right?
Sure. No, yeah. I'm with you that it's possible in principle right now. It's just we haven't seen it happen, so we have to wait.
So, I mean, for all you know, this podcast might convince some product owner sitting somewhere to add this to their backlog and fucking help me win this bet. So
we are making it 6 months from now.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go $50. $50.
I was going to go 100, but okay.
Oh, you're that confident?
Yeah.
I love it. Let's go 100.
Let's go 100.
So,
okay.
There is this interesting aspect to what researchers, and I would even push this to like academic researchers people who use methods to look at the world, make observations, bring it together, and then generate knowledge from it, right? So UX researchers, we certainly do that. Also, other kinds of researchers do that as well, like scientists and this kind of thing. And a big separating factor, I think, between ChatGPT and scientists, let's say, is senses, right? We have senses. We can see, we can make observations, we can set up experiments and about the real world and watch things happen and see patterns and pull that pattern from observations and then make another experiment and see how and change one different thing and see how that influences what happened from before, and so on and so forth, and get closer and closer to what we want to say as knowledge. That's something that ChatGPT just really can't do, can it?
Manipulate the physical world, In that sense, no. So one thing to clarify: as of today, ChatGPT already has ears. It can listen, right? It can already access the microphone and listen. So that's already taken care of.
Okay, so it has okay, that's
right.
it.
Tomorrow,
It has ears.
yeah, it definitely can. I mean, it's able to have full-fledged conversations with you. Like if you go right now on it. Tomorrow, if you just give it the ability to access your webcam, it can then see you, and then you could hold objects up to it and be like, "Oh, what is this?" And it'll give you an answer, right? So that's also doable. In fact, Google just launched at the time of this recording, it was a few days ago, their new AI, which is called Gemini, where they did an entire demo of it, looking at a guy from a person's perspective, him drawing on a sheet of paper, a few squiggly lines, and it's looking at it in real time as a video and telling you what it can do, right? That already exists as of today. Won't be long for ChatGPT to get it, but if we're talking all AI models, then the answer is yeah, an AI model can look at something in real time and tell you what's going on. So it's more about can you it's like a kid who's perfectly healthy but blindfolded. You just have to take off the blindfolds and it can do it.
You're saying all you have to do is take off the blindfold and then it could do it. Do what?
It could see, it could observe, and you could ask questions based on what it's seeing, and it'll give you an answer.
The problem, no, but the problem. This is gets okay. So you're saying that the senses issue is not deterring you in terms of its ability to do research. Okay, and that's fine. That's a fair pushback in terms of the webcams and microphones. Haptic sense, like touching things. Maybe down the road, you can get limbs, and when it goes into robots, this kind of thing. There's a bigger, deeper problem, and I guess we can get into it because I think you want to get into the nitty gritty here. Is like part of what we do, and this is not even just scientists. This is, I think, UX. I'm going to bring it back to UX research. When we're talking to somebody, we're able to like empathize with them to try to take their perspective. That generates new questions. There's a whole aspect of probing, but then there's also a whole aspect of taking data and understanding what that means with a specific context, right? So, and if you're ChatGPT, what you are is just a collection of human knowledge, and when it's generating things, especially when in particular when it's generating words, it's just taking all of human, like the library plus the internet, and it's saying, based on everything I know, what would come next, right? It's not really thinking. So when you're, at least when I hope when most researchers are, let's use the example of an interview. When I have a bunch of different interview transcripts, and I'm looking for patterns, and I'm trying to understand what this means for the specific context. I'm doing a lot of thinking, and I'm trying to model and represent the world in some way, right, in my head, and that representation is something that ChatGPT just doesn't do based on how it operates.
It doesn't do if it's fed a basic prompt, but you could.
No, it doesn't. No, I'm saying it doesn't do it no matter what you prompt. It's just because what it's doing is it's not modeling the world. It's just a collection of.
No, so let's take this example that you said, right? So that so you're going through, let's say, 6, 7, 8 different interview transcripts, right? We feed the same 6, 7, 8 interview transcripts to ChatGPT. Our end state is that we want to come up with patterns and themes based on what it's understood and try to what behaviors it's understood and explain how and why these behaviors occur and happen, right? Based on whatever patterns it's identified. If you prompt it in a certain manner, it can do that, right? So it can go from data, go up to the information level and get to knowledge. That those first three levels it's able to achieve right now, if prompted the right way.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that there are going to be things that a human being can do based on the interviews, based on having conversations with people, places where the human can go that the computer won't be able to go just based on using the words and the meanings of all seven. So okay, if you take all 7 interviews and you have all those words and all that data, right? All that qualitative data, the machine can only get to a few different things. Now, is that useful? Absolutely. It's absolutely useful. But I think a human will be able to take it a bit further because of its background knowledge. It's understanding the context of why we're doing it, of its ability to understand. Like let's say, I mean, we haven't even gotten into usability testing, right? Where can a GPT design a usability test with an actual prototype and then go to make recommendations based on what it's hearing?
No, so let me tell you this, right? And this might actually be what you're hoping to hear. So I've probably spent countless hours just playing around with ChatGPT, the last year. And what I've come to realize is that it absolutely dominates to as good as most competent human beings when it comes to critical thinking, right? Being able to really tackle a problem. And, if you give it something, it's able to, take that in and really tackle that problem, come up with a solution or some thoughts around it. Now, where it lacks is creative thinking, right? Which is what you've described, that it can't go beyond the boundaries of the 7 transcripts you fed it the way a human could, right? And that is what I would say is still today's limitation with ChatGPT, that it's sometimes it needs a nudge, like more than once. Like I've tried to give it a few nudges here and there when I try to get it to think more creatively and think broader, but it's not as straightforward as when I ask it to just critically analyze 7 transcripts and tell me patterns, right? So even after giving the nudges, I've not always been successful. So it's really a hit or miss when it comes to getting it to be start thinking creatively, and that's where I see still a need for a researcher to be involved, like a human researcher to be involved in a project and not 100% delegated to ChatGPT. So, well,
I think there's so you're talking about critical thinking, you're talking about creative thinking, and then I would even call maybe a third, like kind of more building knowledge. I don't know of a single example of a ChatGPT, and you could, I mean, I'm glad, I don't know if you have one off the top of your head of it building new knowledge.
I mean, to be fair,
can you give me one example of how because it's been out for a while, and you said you've played around with it. I've played around with it a little bit. Can you give me an example of ChatGPT building new knowledge that nobody else knows but ChatGPT?
I mean, are we talking in the context of research or just in general?
I'm just talking. If you want to bring in the context of research, that's fine. I'm just saying in general, because I think my point is that just it looks at everything that's ever been written and it fills in the blank based on everything that's already been written. And by definition, everything that's already been written is existing knowledge, and it just uses that to fill in the blank. And new knowledge, which is the prime, when I made the distinction between secondary research and primary research is supposed to go to designers or business people with things they've never heard before, because we went out and we learned it.
No, so I mean, I also just want to clarify on the terms here. I think we could bring this up when in the magic of post production. There's this data, information, knowledge, wisdom pyramid, right? I've shared this with you earlier. So data, obviously, this is our transcripts, right? The information is probably the base level stuff that it would get out of the transcripts with minimal prompting. If you do a good enough prompting, you get knowledge. And I'm talking about this pyramid's definition of knowledge, which is the hows and whys, the patterns and stuff like that. I think what you're referring to, Chris, is what the pyramid calls wisdom, right? The ability to make well-informed decisions, take effective action based on understanding the underlying knowledge, right? The new stuff, the stuff that goes into, and the stuff that most people would publish in their PhDs and theses, right?
No, I mean the data. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom.
That's raw, unprocessed facts, right?
Yes, but ChatGPT doesn't go out and collect data right now. I mean, we have to feed it to it. You're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your scenario,
yeah.
Okay, let's not talk about in principle. Let's just talk about in reality today. I'm not saying, in 10 years, will this be possible? How does ChatGPT go out and get new data to start with? I mean, it doesn't. It uses 2,000 years of human writing as its data. That's its data, right? That's its data. So it doesn't bring in new data. It just doesn't. It's not how it works.
And I'm going to kind of use this to also pivot to the usability point that you were making. Usability study point.
Sure, we can talk. Let's talk about that. That's actually a harder point.
That's you'll be surprised.
Here we go.
So I mean, ChatGPT right now can visit website URLs.
I feel like Sam Altman should be paying you money.
I swear to God, dude! Like I'm just selling this shit. So I mean, as of right now, GPT has the ability to surf the web based on what do you ask it to search for, or if you give it a URL and point it directly. It uses Bing, yeah. But you can give it a URL and be like, go here, right? So let's say you're the designer and you give it the Figma prototype, right? And it's like, okay, go here. And now it could basically open the prototype in a browser format and actually look, right? Now, again, it's looking. Its eyes are working in that sense. So it can actually see the screens. Right. And so now because it can see your screens, and if you were to ask it that, okay, can you, audit this prototype based on the 10 heuristics listed out on NNG, right? It could actually do a full UX audit of your prototype, going screen by screen and analyzing it through each one of those heuristics, right? And now, based on that, because you gave it the bare minimum and you gave it where it needs to go the way a designer would, it's actually now able to generate that data in the sense of this is how this screen has performed against these different heuristics. And now you have that data, right? And now you could ask it to, further synthesize on that and give you more of a summary or a theme or so on and so forth. And that's how it starts building up from data to information to knowledge.
That ChatGPT responds to when it looks at your Figma screens, right? I would agree with you that is data, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's information, because data would just be just the basic micro level, like took 2 seconds from here to here, right? But KLM GOMS assesses it from what are all the individual steps and steps that a user would have to do in order to do certain actions on the screen, or individual steps that include actions and motor abilities to do a certain task that's available on the screen. That's what KLM GOMS is, right? And it's not just counting each and every single interaction, but it's also computing it for you. And because it's doing the computing, that is technically information. Now, if you ask it, why is it this long? And, why does it take this much time? And what could I do to make that time shorter? and it starts giving you reasoning that, oh, you could optimize it this way, or you could optimize it that way. That is knowledge, right? So you could get it to go up to, you know, the stage where it starts analyzing it for as an auditor would. So you've got the data, and now what do you do with that and translate that, right? And yeah, I mean, you could take it up, if prompted the right way, take it up one notch higher, and get it to, you know, translate those outputs into sort of design and business recommendations that talk about the wider piece of the puzzle, right? For a wider context. Again, if that context has been fed into it. So yeah, there's a lot that you could do out of this. It's a bit of prompt engineering magic, but if you've got that skill down, then, you know, it's up to you now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the prompt engineering point is because you're basically, what you're doing is you're downloading in some ways the background that the human has.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving that to the computer, and you're letting the computer then, I guess, synthesize what it sees and then what the human knows into that next decision point. Are going to be interesting to watch it evolve, and watch it, see where it can really benefit humanity, and see where it can be a little bit screwy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to think about it this way, right? When answering the question of why or how, you know, essentially, if you're trying to give a justification to something, some phenomenon, right, you are going to tap into existing scientific literature to help explain those points, right? Like, you know, if you just go back to every scientific achievement we've had in the last, let's say, 2 decades, that's all off the basis of the stuff that we've discovered in the last 2 centuries, right? So it's building on those foundations that have been laid over the years, right? So yes, it is using knowledge and data and you know, words that have been laid out on the internet, but it's also using that as a means to justify and explain its points, right? To say that if, you know, so and so did this, then, you know, a person Y should be able to do that.
So I want to get your point on this, because I think it's an interesting one, because it's something I've heard get brought up and within the UX context, but like synthetic users. So if, let's say, you know, I can think of a situation where I want to do some generative research with a specific subset of people, and let's just say I know the people, I know how to describe the people that I want to talk to very well, but let's just say I'm a little bit low on funds, or I don't have a lot of time, and I want to ask ChatGPT to create an avatar of that person, let's say, and then ask that person a whole bunch of different questions, and use what ChatGPT predicts that they would say as, let's say, my data that I would then run and start making decisions. I mean, there's a few questions.
So, I mean, it's an interesting one. I've spent some time really thinking about this, and, you know, at first my answer was yes, but now it's no. And when I mean first, I really mean months ago. My answer was yes, but I'm more leaning towards no right now, and the reason is that if you took a well constructed persona, right, and I'm not even saying archetype, I'm going, you know, deeper and saying persona. That persona, you know, the way a researcher would put it together to present to business stakeholders is basically, this is that entire person's life on one page, right? And it's only really the high level stuff that is contextual and relevant for you to know about who this persona is. But when you're answering a question, like any question that we answer, the style that we answer, the way we answer, the pitch and the tone that we use when answering, the body language we apply, this is all developed over years and years of, you know, experiences that we've built, right? Whether we've gone through positive or negative experiences, stories that we live through, and so on and so forth, right? You can't build, 20-something or 30-something years of experiences into one page, right? So if you were to take that one page persona, that's not going to give you the subconscious and psychological aspects of who that person is. That's just going to tell you it's a mom, has 2 kids, drives this kind of car, has this kind of day-to-day lifestyle, but we don't know anything beyond that, right? So if you were to then ask that ChatGPT generated persona a question, it's not going to give you the depth of knowledge that you could get from actually interviewing a real person.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we do the interviews, right? Because we don't have any, and I guess ChatGPT doesn't have any background knowledge to pull from to answer these new questions that we have in our particular context, right?
Exactly. So there's actually this whatchamacallit, concept that's been coming about called the digital twin, right? Where you could totally digitize yourself, your personality, you in a digital format, and then use that to simulate certain actions and tasks in the virtual world, right? So if in theory,
based on what's it trained on?
right now it's very high level stuff, the archetype persona level details, right? Because keep in mind that the use cases for this digital twin does not require 20-30 years of life experiences to be able to do what it needs to do. Yeah, right. So it's just driven by base level behaviors, and not deep rooted subconscious level stuff, where we as researchers rely on that to really get to the root cause of a lot of things, right? And that's how we overcome and prove or disprove some crazy hypotheses that we would have been tasked to find out more about. So yeah, I mean, if that digital twin ever does get further enriched to further levels, then that might be the way to actually start creating well-defined, I guess, digital twins for you to then virtually interview as opposed to real people.
I'd love to interview myself at some point. I would find that fascinating. Stuff is evolving and moving quickly, so it's important to think about what's possible and what is it going to be like in 2 years or 5 years, but it's hard to know. It's hard to predict the future. Let's just put it that way. We've had plenty of interesting predictions about AI that have not come true. That we just want. Hopefully, I urge people who are trying to predict the future about how great it's going to be or how amazing it's going, the level it's going to get to try to have those be tempered a little bit, just because we've had a lot of people who are very, very smart make these kinds of predictions and they've kind of turned out to be wrong. Just look at the Jetsons. But I'd say that, okay, so I think we're in agreement that using these persona avatars and then like feeding, questions at them and then making design judgments based on what they say, like using that as data, let's put it that way, is probably not a good idea. I would be curious to get your take though on this. Is it better though than having no? So let's just say I need to make a choice and I don't have money for it. Can I ask the computer? And is that at least better than me just going on my gut?
Okay, so I have sort of 2 different ways of answering this one. The way I'm thinking about this is that you could, if it's like really high level stuff that doesn't warrant or require some real deep thinking, but
it's not high level stuff.
Yeah,
you're saying okay.
No, I mean in the sense that it's like for example, if the ask is that, okay, can you look at these 2 different screens and tell me which one you like better and why, right? That's, I mean, so certain things might be like, oh yeah, this might work, that might not work. Like for example, let's say for example your persona is you have one persona that's young 20s type of person, going to college, whatever, that kind of lifestyle, and then another persona that's late 50s, towards the end of their career, made all this kind of money.
Heterogeneous populations that are very different from each other. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, if the question is, look at these two screens and tell me, what I should work on, the most generic answer you'll get from ChatGPT based on those two personas is that for the guy who's in his late 50s, you probably need to factor in a bit more accessibility in your designs with, larger fonts and stuff like that. So you'll get the real high level, almost obvious kind of things, right? And that's where it's certainly better than nothing. But also at the same time, as a researcher, we never really just talk to one person from that subset of a population or subset of a subset of a subset of a population and say, okay, that's it. That one person was good enough. There's always minimum of 3.
Well, bring up Sam Altman. He was getting interviewed. This was before the charade that happened with, him, leaving and then coming back and the whole thing. But he was getting interviewed. He was on stage and he was basically saying that, like, I think he was being asked about expertise and if ChatGPT can eventually replace them. And I think his answer was no, but it's like, it could get to a level that's just kind of like an average. So I think this is what you're saying. Like, to us who live in this world, these answers that it'll have is like kind of obvious. We're like, of course it's going to talk about accessibility, but to a business person who has never encountered design, that actually could be useful, right?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it depends on who. It could even be mind blowing. But yeah,
wait. It could be something that they've never ever even considered.
Oh my God.
Once. Yeah. So I think that there's an interesting thing there where it's like ChatGPT is going to get to a point where it's like an average designer pretty quickly. Now above average and completely expert. And then this is partly why I was pushing back up front around the expertise within research and like how we're building knowledge. And is that something that ChatGPT can do? But
so let me put it this way, right? So if you have average, above average, and expert, right? Average is what it could do today, right? Above average is also what it could do today if you have a prompt engineer helping you sort of put that together, right? Expert it's far from it, right? I don't think so. I mean, expert is, again, see, unless we crack the whole, can you fit 20, 30 years of life experiences into a digital twin, then maybe. Because why? Because you're only as good as a researcher. You're only a better researcher than I am just because you've got way more years of experience that I could never artificially create. Right? No matter how many books I try to cram down, no matter how many videos and podcasts I listen to, I can't create that knowledge through just basic knowledge because you've got more years of experience than I do. Right.
Well, now you're getting into the very philosophical question. We should ask ChatGPT this. The difference between knowledge and experience. Is there one?
Yeah, I mean, eventually there's going to be a point of diminishing returns, but we know for a fact that experience does have a role to play. There is an advantage to having more experience than just knowledge.
You can tell when you're working with somebody who's very experienced. Absolutely,
exactly, right. And and ChatGPT right now does not have years of one specific individual's because like if it's got all the knowledge of the last 2,000 years that's out there on the internet, right? There's nowhere on the internet of Chris Cowell's entire life, from every waking moment.
Let's just say I wrote a book of like my approach to UX research. Let's say I don't even know if I'd be able to cram it all in there. Like there's like stuff that I can't put into. It's like intangible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And even that also is not sufficient because it's not factoring all the other things about you, right? That make you who you are.
Yeah,
because
my personality and
everything
and
that sort of,
my motivations and like my interests. I think this all matters.
Exactly. Because if you take your entire knowledge base and put it into a totally different individual and you ask both yourself and this other person a research question, you might get slightly different answers. And that's because it's your life experiences that are also influencing it. Right. So that's where I see is the.
And also what I ate for breakfast.
Yeah.
That also matters too, unfortunately.
100%. Right? So yeah, that's why I see it sort of never
very interesting
getting to that expert level anytime soon.
Well, we definitely had a lot to say about AI. I think obviously AI is going to be a evolving topic. It's going to be in the news. We're both in tech, so we're both going to be following it. So I don't see that this conversation ending anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay, great. I don't know. Do you have anything else that you wanted to leave us with? But I thought it was a very spirited debate. I don't know if we moved each other in terms of our opinions when it comes to whether we should be. Whether I'm trying to think if I to summarize things for audience members, should they be scared or not? I can't tell.
I don't know. The way I look at it is it's more of a show don't tell kind of situation. So right now I've only told you things, right? I'm not really showing you, except for my custom GPT that's in the link below that the audience is
go check that out. Ask it some questions. See if you can stump Muzzy, the UX researcher. Probably can't.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, it's a work in progress, but
it's interesting. I mean, let me just leave you with this mind teaser. Just think of the smartest person, not in history. Like, give me a name. Give me somebody who you think is like the smartest person to have ever lived.
I don't know. Let's take a generic answer. Elon Musk.
Okay, so Elon Musk. Would you rather have Elon Musk in a room to ask him questions or your ChatGPT?
I go with Musk.
Yeah,
just because it's a personality, right? We as humans were drawn to personality more than just pure lifeless knowledge.
Well, I would say at the very least, it would be I would guess a much more less boring conversation talking to Elon Musk than talking to ChatGPT 4, but that's not going out too far on a limb there.
That's a wrap for this episode of UX. If you want to stay up to date with Chris and Mustafa's latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave them a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps other listeners find the podcasts and join in on the conversation. And don't forget to check the line notes to follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for behind-the-scenes content, updates, access to comment boards, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening to UX, and we'll see you next time for some more insights into the ever-evolving world of user experience.